A very good afternoon to one and all present here. On behalf of the management, principal, HOD and faculty of Sri Krishna College of Engineering and Technology, I, Majda Fatima Kame, Assistant Professor, Computer Science and Engineering, extend a hearty welcome to Mr. Rakesh, Assistant Manager, Renault Nissan Technology, Chennai, and all the participants. An introduction about the Mr. Rakesh is a data analyst with mobile development background, having extensive experience in providing solutions to clients, right from gathering the requirement to presenting the proof of concepts and providing complete solution. An individual contributor in the team as a data analyst in the client location, relevant data analyst experience of 1.6 years and overall 7 years professional software development experience. He is interested in gaining extensive knowledge in providing solutions on text data and tabular data, an avid follower of the technology industry and current technology trends, solutions, tools, including from other platforms and suggest wherever necessary. He is associated with In-Season Fish, a non-profit venture as a volunteer. In-Season Fish aims at bringing sustainable fishing practice by creating awareness among seafood consumers. His contribution is on creating an image classification tool to identify fishes using computer vision. He has hands-on experience in several domains, including microfinance, semiconductors, robotics handlers, insurance, marine life, and machine learning in training and image classification. We welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Yes, now I hand over the session to the first person to take forward.
Oh yeah, thank you very much. Just let me know if my voice is audible to everyone of you. Fatima, can you just
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Your voice is audible.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, there is an echo, right? Yeah, that's what I was also thinking. I'll try to plug in a microphone to see if I can avoid that. Okay. Just confirm if my screen is visible to you. I want to just make sure that the presentation is visible to you all. Can you just open your mic and just say, because I cannot see the screen from mine.
Yeah, yes, sir. Is it visible?
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I'll try to reintroduce myself here. Like most of the things that Ms. Fatima said was also right, but I'm not like into data visualization or analyst, but most of my experience and expertise were into computer vision. When I say computer vision, so I also work as a senior AI engineer in Renault Nissan Mitsubishi Automotive India. So my major role in Renault Nissan is to bring up AI products with respect to computer vision. Yeah. Apart from that, I also, as Ms. Fatima said, I also volunteer into a non-profitable organization called In-Season Fish. They operate from Chennai. So they are like sort of into a research plus conservation team. It's head by two doctorates in marine geography and wildlife conservation. So they aim at bringing sustainability into the fishing practices and also the consumable part of fishing in Chennai, yeah? In the East Coast mostly. So being said, I help them in building few object detection tools, especially to detect the species of fish that the fisherman catches, and also we are into conservation of shark and stingrays. So they think they are something very important in terms of the conservation for the whole marine ecosystem itself. So I'm sort of helping them in bringing technology in practice to see how well the marine conservation can be facilitated also. Yeah. So yeah, this is about me. So before I really start the session, I want to really understand who my audience are, because that would really help me um, in delivering the precise content per se. Yeah? Because I have a lot of things in mind that I would like to talk. But if I can get an understanding of who my audience are, this is going to really help me in narrowing down what I should talk today in this given 1.5 um, hours of time. Yeah. If um, if Fatima, Miss Fatima or Miss Priya would anyone just give me an overview of what sort of audience do I have today? That would really help me in understanding.
Sir, professors from various engineering colleges,
Okay. Okay.
that would be their audience, sir.
Okay. So most of them are from the educational background. Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
you
Yes, sir. From all over India.
okay from all over India. Okay. So
Yes,
you
yes,
so they directly and indirectly talk and interact with students on a day-to-day basis.
yes.
Okay. From which stream of engineering are they all from?
Mostly from all departments, sir. IT, computer science,
Okay.
then some from ECE, Triple E.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. So mostly engineering STEM
Yeah.
from STEM background. Yeah. Right. So okay, let's get into the presentation. See, I have 4 things in mind today. We will first try to understand what is artificial intelligence altogether, and where do we stand in terms of maturity in intelligence, at least within our circle. See, the way the research goes in India and how it reaches the student and what we use in industry is all like distributed. It's like totally different from one another. Yeah. So you might be today working on quantum computing, which doesn't exist in the current industrial practices at all. But same is the case with AI also. AI, what we assume to have understood is totally different from what we really use in the industry. So, which is what I'm going to cover as the first topic. So, we will try to talk what all AI we do and what do we do in an automotive company like Renault and Nissan, and outside that also. Yeah. And next thing that I would like to talk about is what is a data driven approach. Like there are different ways of approaching a problem. Like a traditional software way of approaching a problem is writing conditions, doing a rule based system to solve a problem, like specific problem, or bringing on technology that would enable any problem or facilitation of the problem. So where data driven stands apart from this rule based system or the traditional conditional programming that we do in our everyday software practices. And the third thing I want to talk about is what what how how or what AI is in the automotive industry, and my expertise topic, computer vision. So I'll be talking a lot about that also. And the fourth thing will be a question and answer session where I would be really open to take up your questions. It can be any question. No question is a silly question. Yeah. Um, so it can be anything. So we will park the last half an hour for our question and answer session. So I would really expect a lot of question and answers to happen. Okay, so let's get into the first topic. You might have a lot of assumptions or pre-assumptions or understanding of what an AI is based on what you hear in the news or what sort of research articles you read on a daily basis or your syllabus that you teach to your students. All that gives a different perspective altogether about AI. Yep. So if you see, there are like 3 stages of AI that we really uh, handle in our day-to-day life, or the maturity in which the AI is can be categorized into 3 stages. So first thing we call as a narrow AI and the general AI. Yeah, these two are something that we sort of like really matured enough to build applications on top of these stacks, um, where it has started enabling lives of people. As I said, so I've been volunteering with an organization called In Season Fish. Yeah? So there are like 3 things that we really work on. So one is a classification problem. So any consumer or buyer who wants to buy fish, but really they don't have a clue about what fish to buy for that day, or identify which fish is fresh or which fish is not fresh. So this classification algorithm that we have built, a tool I would say, really helps them in understanding what is the species of fish. So that really is a computer vision problem on the front of classification, on image classification. Yeah. The second thing would be to identify the freshness of fish. So if you are a fish eater or a fish consumer, you have eaten fish for your um, for quite some time, so you always know that you don't get fresh fish every day. Yeah, and there are many misconceptions in the market on identifying the freshness of the fish. The fisherman usually asks you to open the gills and check if it's really in blood red color or it's in brown color. That would indicate the freshness of fish. But that really is not the condition when it comes to buying fishes. Yeah, in most of the condition, the eye of the fish, that is eye of the fish, is your indicator. Meaning, if the eye of the fish the eye of the fish is going to indicate um, how fresh the fish is. Yeah, there are 3 stages of there are like 3 stages um, uh, of fish. So if you find your fish eye to be like really transparent or clear, it indicates the fish is like 1 day or 2 day fresh. Yeah. So if it is in a translucent stage, like cloggy, like it looks like a candle, a wax candle, then we can say it's like 2 days, at least 2 days old. If it is like opaque, like completely clogged, then it's not like fit for consumption at all. Yeah. So we have built a computer vision algorithm um, to detect or locate the part of the eye in the given fish that would really tell you how old the fish is. Yeah. So this is a very quite a turning point for a lot of consumer who really don't know to buy fish. They don't have to really rely on what their fishmonger says, or any other misconceptions that are around. Yeah, they can really open up their mobile application and then open the camera to identify how fresh the fish is. And the third use case that we are working on is detecting and counting the number of shark and stingrays that are caught on a fishing harbor for a given day. So usually the footage of the harbor is taken using a drone, uh, and the footage is passed on to an AI algorithm, a computer vision model, which would tell us how many number of sharks or stingrays were caught for that given day. So this data is really going to help the research community in terms of the conservation of the sharks and stingrays. Yeah. So they find that to be a really important data to further proceed their research studies. So these are some of the enablements that we can bring in to our day-to-day lives using technologies like computer vision. Yeah. So this falls under narrow AI or general AI. Or other than this, any object detection problem, any classification problem, or anything to do with using OCR or machine learning, all that can be categorized under narrow and general AI. So so as I said, so this is the stack. So this is the stack in which most of your narrow AI and general AI problems fall into. So if you take machine learning, so most of data mining activities or any other prediction activities would really fall under this category. Yeah. Um, under this category. And if we take NLP, that is natural language processing, where most of your data is going to be text data, we can say a lot of machine translation problem. The Google translation services that you use every day is all built on top of this. Yeah. And your sentiment analysis, so your day-to-day email classification, spam classification, all that is built on such platforms, right? And if you take computer vision, um, a lot of things like facial recognition and your emotional identification and the classification problem, detection problem, OCR problem, all that can be categorized under this computer vision problem. Yeah. So end of the day, all this falls under narrow AI and general AI. So apart from this, we also have something called super AI. Yeah. Is the most covered and debatable type of AI that we tend to hear every day, which is quite misleading also at some point. Yeah, we also call this singularity. Um, if you have seen in media, there is always a debate on whether to proceed with AI anymore, or is it a threat to humanity? Because there is always a conflict between Elon Musk and Zuckerberg in terms of debating whether to continue their research on AI or to put a full stop to it. They always have a contradicting view on whether AI could be a threat to humanity or not. Yeah. So this is called super AI. So the definition of super AI would be um, whether to see if uh, the AI machine that we are building surpasses the intelligence of humans. So being said, that means your AI can build its own AI. So that is singularity, super AI. Frankly, we haven't reached that maturity level yet. Even in terms of research, we haven't really gone to the extent where your AI machine is capable of building its own AI machine. Yeah. It could be in terms of just numbers or numerics or binaries, but not really an AI system is capable of building another AI system at this given point. But it's always a debatable point. Um, if you're an avid reader or you like to read, I would highly recommend you to read this book by Nick Bostrom called Super Intelligence. This talks a lot about this super AI. Yeah? So in general, it's a very good um, reading other than your research reading or your academic reading in terms of the artificial intelligence. It's like really good book. I would highly recommend, if you want to please take a note of it or take a photo, please feel free to do it now. Um, so yeah, this is on where we stand in terms of building our AI applications. Yeah, we will see a small demo now. Something that we have built in our Renault Corporation. So this is a very fundamental of how computer vision can be enabled for self-driving cars. If you see, this is built on an image segmentation technique, where it pixelates the object that is seen in front of the camera, and also detects and classifies the object it sort of identifies. So if you see, someone has a question, please go ahead. Yeah, I can really take up questions at this point also. So if you see, so this image segmentation model that I've built is on an instance segmentation front, where it is trained on 20 different objects using COCO dataset. So it sort of detects objects between car, bus, truck, person, motorcycle, traffic lights. So traffic lights, and it also detects human. So this misclassifies the barricade as chair. That's still fine because the accuracy was really less. So yeah, these are some of the exciting things that we work on the computer vision front, using computer vision technologies for automotive. Yeah, but this is not the only thing that we assume to work on also. When I say I come from an automotive company, we do things beyond this also. Yeah, we just don't stop from building our self-driving cars. But there are also other areas where we apply our AI techniques to enable our life better. So we will get into the details on the third section of the lecture. Yeah? So we will see what is a data-driven approach. See, in a traditional computer programming, we usually feed our rules, that is the conditions. It could be an if else condition, or a while condition, or for loop conditions, or data from some other source, which is binded together to build its own rules and all that. Yeah. So it is usually your data and rules that you bind together as a program to get an answer out. So if you are to take a mobile application, usually your mobile applications are driven by APIs that are built in the backend, which would feed you data. And a lot of time, the mobile applications will have a click buttons for its actions. And other things mostly will be to view your data that the API is exposing you. Yeah, some sort of actions are really built based on whatever rules that you want to do. A button clicking action can either submit a form, or it can cancel a submission, or or do navigations, or close a form, or things like that. Yeah, so these are rules that we define behind on every action that we want to build, that is binded along with the data to give you an answer. But the data driven way is something very different. Yeah, where we do not define our own rules, we do not write conditions, we only wish what our patterns should be. Yeah, so the input that we give to our algorithm or the program will be your data and the label associated with it. Now say I want to identify the species of fish that a fisherman catches for every day. Now assume there are like 300 types of fishes that are caught regularly on the east coast of India. Okay, So in order for me to build an algorithm of this sort to identify the species of fish based on what the fisherman catches on a daily basis, I will have to, on a machine learning approach, I will have to collect the data, which will be the photos of fishes and the label associated to it. So here the labels will be all the 300 species of fishes. Now say I catch the pomfret fish, and also I catch a mackerel on a daily basis. So this is among the 300 species of fishes that are caught. So the data set that we build should contain this mackerel and the pomfret fish along with its label associated. Just like how we have defined this walking action through a binary under the label walking and running, biking or golfing, we will have all the actions or the classification indexes associated to its label for that particular given data. Okay, this is how we bind our data set, and then we build our machine learning algorithm on top of it, where it learns the pattern behind the data that we are providing and then matches it against the label that are associated with this data. In that way, the output is going to be the rules that we assume to produce. So in our fish classification algorithm, the rules or the patterns are going to be the output as labels. So end of the day, any test data, any photo of fish that you give to this algorithm is going to tell between what the species of fish is. That is how the result is going to be. Yeah. So the major difference between traditional approach and the data-driven approaches, we bother to collect data and the label associated and build our machine learning algorithm on top of it to extract the rules or the answers out of it, instead of predefining the rules along with the data and then extracting the answers out. So this is the major difference here. So when we say data, so how do we collect this data, and what are the type of data that are available? See, let's say it really depends on what problem we are going to solve. Yeah, like I said, now this non-profitable this organization comes to me asking, see, we are going to conduct a research on how many sharks are caught every day and what is the impact that it is going to cause on the ecological marine ecology for a given season. So the key factor here is to identify the number of sharks and stingrays that are caught every day. So in order for me to build an algorithm in a data-driven way, what I would do is first approach it in a data-driven way. So the data first. So the first thing we will have to do is collect our data. First define our data. First differentiate between what our data is going to be, and then devise a way to collect our data. So for this shark classification problem, identification problem, our data would be a collection of sharks and the stingrays. Similarly, if I am building if I'm sort of building a self-driving car, here in this case, my data would be in everyday objects that I'm likely to see while I drive my car. So the everyday objects or things that we are likely to see in our while we drive are our neighbor cars or humans. It could be humans or motorbikes. Could be trucks. It could be share auto. Could be the traffic light, or it could be median, or it could be a cop that is going to stop us, or it literally can be anything that we can encounter while we drive our vehicles. Yeah. So this is how we would really define our data set. So in most of the problems that we are to solve, there is already some sort of data sets that are available. Yeah, we don't have to really go around and then collect our data set. Except for few scenarios like this shark identification, we really don't have data on localized data, we call it. See, because the species of fish that we catch in the east coast or in the west coast of India is going to be totally different. Yeah, so is the case with other part of the world also. So so it really doesn't help if we have to go and pick up the internet data, because the species of fish that we are going to find in this coast is going to be totally different from what we are going to encounter in the other part of the world. So in that case, these are the exceptions where we will have to prepare our own data set. Yeah. So similarly, the another example would be your vehicle number plate identification. If you have seen some Hollywood movies, you would have already noticed the difference between the number plate that we see, the vehicle number plate that we see in our everyday life is different from what it looks in the other part of the world also. Yeah. So if you have to build an algorithm or a tool to identify the number plate of a vehicle, so we already know the number plate in US or UK is going to look different from what it would look in India. So these are called localized data. So these are scenarios where we will not find the data sets available in the internet already. So in this case, we will have to go around and do our homework to build our own data set. So another example would be uh, so this idea came up while I went on to take a session in an engineering college in Kannur, Kerala. So there was a professor who wanted to build a tool or a AI tool to identify the disease in a plant. So she said they grow tapioca a lot in the region where she comes from. So there is some sort of specific disease that they really encounter, and the farmers really have to rely on experts to come visit their farm until they know it is too late for them to find a cure for those disease. Yeah. So she wanted to solve this problem using AI, where she indicated that okay, this would be a simple image classification problem with identifying between a diseased plant and a healthy plant. Later we can get into details of what the disease is also. Yeah. Once we identify a healthy plant from a diseased plant, it would be easy for the farmer to decide whether to plug the plant out or to spray an insecticide on the plant. Yeah. So this data is also a localized data, because the disease is a local disease. So they really don't know if there would be any other data set available to identify a healthy tapioca plant versus a diseased tapioca plant in any part of the world. It is a very unlikely situation. Yeah. We will not encounter such things on a day-to-day basis. So these are exceptional categories where we will have to put our effort in building our own data set. Okay. Being said, so in most of the typical scenarios, we will have to build our own data set. Yeah. We know for image data, the best way is to go around and then take photographs of the object of our interest, and then build a data set that is sufficient for us to build an AI algorithm on top of it. Yeah. Let's see what are the data sets that are already available to us in the internet. These are like official data sets that are like tuned and tested, that can be readily used to build our own algorithm. Okay. So few of the data that we can really say are the first gateway level data is called a MNIST data set. And there are data of cats and dogs available, and to identify species of flower. And we also have a facial expression recognition challenge. So this data set has a lot of different expression of human faces. and we have Stanford cars. So this would contain a lot different varieties of cars. So let's see what this data sets are in detail. Yeah. So this MNIST data set, as I said, is an entry-level data set which only has handwritten uh, digits from 0 to 9. So it has like thousands and thousands of varieties of handwritten digits between 0 to 9. So a lot of us write 8 in a clockwise to anti-clockwise way. A few of them write from clockwise to anti-clockwise way. So the pattern in which we write 8 or 7, 5, or the numbers is going to really differ. Yeah. So so this has a n number of um, digits that are handwritten. They've collected this and pooled together to form a data set called MNIST data set. Okay. So similarly, we have CIFAR 10 data set. So CIFAR 10 data set again is a image based data set where there are like 10 categories from aeroplane to truck. So if you have to build a image classification problem to identify trucks between truck and bike, so you can readily use this CIFAR 10 data set to build your own algorithm to identify the trucks or or classify the images where the truck is available and where the truck is not available. Yeah. So the volume of this MNIST data set is like 60,000 training images and 10,000 testing images. So everything is um, in a dimension of 784. Like 784, when I say, is the pixel size of this each images that this data set contains. So these are basically grayscale level data sets. So if you find this dimensions and the words like grayscale a bit alien to you, I would recommend you to go to this blog that I have written for computer vision. So this has the complete syllabus of computer vision from A to Z. It would right away tell you from what a pixels is, how a image is seen by human versus how a machine sees it, and how images are represented as a numpy array, and it it also contains a lot of Python code snippets where you can test your own code and load your images and do some sort of processing. Yeah. So there's like a lot of small snippets that I have added. So similarly, this also has some of the basic operations that we can do on the images using OpenCV. So the first 4 to 5 chapters are all about Python and OpenCV. Even a very basic beginner, say your first year students or your second year students, can also open this up and then readily start understanding how to apply computer vision in their assignments on an everyday basis. Yeah. So this also has morphological operations. I will get into details of morphological operations when I talk about the third section of this lecture. And then this goes around talking about machine learning algorithms also. And in machine learning algorithm, I talk about KNN and decision trees. I have included all the mathematics behind the decision trees also. It's like if you read this, you're going to like really understand decision tree for your lifetime, and you're never going to forget this forever. Yeah. So it has its own example and the Python snippet code available against it. So I would highly recommend you to recommend this to your students, and you also take a look at it and read it. And I'm in the stage of writing the deep learning chapters of this also. which will be completed in like few months. So I will share this with you so that you can also take a look at it, read it. So I am sharing the friend URL of this link. You don't really need to buy a premium Medium account to read this account. If you have to click through this link. Okay, going back to where we left. Okay, so you would really understand all this about this data set in detail when you start reading that blog also, yeah. And okay, and there are other data sets like dog, cat, and pandas. So this would really contain three categories: simple, dog, cat, and pandas. And there are also smiling faces data set. Okay, so okay, let's talk in detail about this flower 17 data set. Yeah. So if you see, someone has built a data set to categorize 17 types of flowers. Yeah. Again, these are flowers that we are very unlikely to see in our in our daily life, at least in India, because this someone has built from the west has included flowers that only grows in the west. Yeah. So say if you're been asked or given an assignment to build your flower classification algorithm using image classification techniques in OpenCV, you cannot just go around and do using this flower data set, because it doesn't have jasmine or rose flower in it, because these are some of the flowers that we really use on a day-to-day basis, yeah, in our daily life. So in that case, you will have to build your own data set. So this is what the difference between a localized data set and the data sets that are already available, yeah, established data set. So similarly, we have data sets on Stanford cards and all that. Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. Coming to a very important data set, we have something called the ImageNet data set. Okay. This is like the mother of all data set. Most of your advanced image classification algorithms, pre-trained algorithms like VGG16, VGG19, Inception V3, ResNet, all the high-tech, or I would say advanced algorithm that are in existence is all built using this ImageNet dataset. So this ImageNet dataset alone has 22,000 categories of objects or things that we see in our daily life. Just like how we have three categories here in this dataset: dog, cat, and pandas, as simple as that. This ImageNet has 22,000 categories. And the volume of data, if you see, so the volume of data alone is around like 1 lakh for testing alone, right? So we call this the de facto standard for image classification, computer vision classification algorithms, because a lot of the pre-trained algorithms, I think I made a mistake. It's not like 22,000 categories, but there are only like 1,000 categories, I believe. Something I would leave you to check for yourself, but this is the biggest of all the data set that is available, at least in the computer vision area alone. Yeah, the reason why this stands as the de facto for computer vision is this can be readily used to build your high-tech algorithms. On top of that, we also have techniques like transfer learning, where you can identify categories of things that your data set has not really seen. This might look a bit contradictory to what I've been talking for a while, but again, due to constraint of time, I would recommend you to go back to my profile and read on this transfer learning. Yeah, is written in a very simple way that even without a real understanding of what computer vision, you would still be able to implement and build a transfer learning based algorithm for you to classify your own objects. Yeah. Um, so as I said, say now you have a data set of only cat and dogs. Okay. You want to build an algorithm where you want to classify the panda bear. So in that case, uh, there is no way that you can go and find a panda bear in India anywhere. So there should be some way that this should enable you to build your own algorithm without you going to the field and collecting the data. Yeah? This is where this transfer learning comes into picture, where it makes use of all the advanced pre-trained algorithm that I spoke about, and then apply transfer learning techniques, because these pre-trained algorithms are built on ImageNet data set, like massive data set. So it is going to learn to extract the features from whatever training data that you can give. Based on the limited number of training data that you are going to give, it is going to give you the model that will be like industry ready to give you the test accuracy that you would never expect. Again, I will send this link. Please, there's some questions, sir. How we develop dashboard in deep learning or machine learning? Okay, see, dashboard is pure software work. It's nothing to do about deep learning. Yeah. See, end of the day, your deep learning is going to give you a binary that would look like your any other exe binaries or your Java based JDK binaries. Yeah, you're going to query those binaries through APIs to fetch your results. Any results that you get as your JSON or XML, you're going to show in a dashboard, which is a pure software work. So we cannot develop dashboard in deep learning. You can only develop dashboard using deep learning. Okay. Please tell how to create labels and annotation of image for training. Okay, sure. I will cover this, Ruchika, Lalit. Where are we? Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is on the image classification data sets. Okay. So someone had asked how we can build our data set. Yeah, sure. Now see, this is a real-time project that we are building in our company to identify to detect trucks that comes in our inside our campus. Okay. See, we have a huge plant in Chennai where the car that is assembled or manufactured will have to be sent to the harbor or to any other dealers to be used here. So we really rely on car carrier trucks. These are like typical, different from typical trucks. So we wanted a system which would really capture the number plate of those trucks and their in and out time. Okay, which is why we built a system. I can really show you. So using the typical IP cameras, we would capture the live stream of the vehicle that are inbound and outbound. By using a deep learning model, we are going to detect whether the vehicle that comes in is a truck or is not a truck. Yeah. So and then we would use the number plate detection APIs to extract the number plate out of it. So this is how the results is going to look like. So once it is detected, it's going to tell you whether it is a truck or a car or a motorbike. These are three categories on which this model is trained on. Okay. Okay. Now going back to the annotation part.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So have you done this project using YOLO
We have done on both YOLO and SSD.
and
SSD,
SSD?
yes.
What is that? Can I know, please?
Oh, SSD is a type of object detection algorithm, just like you have faster RCNN. See,
Okay.
we see. Okay, going back to this, while we build, okay, we do not just build using one algorithm. Okay,
So
so
you have combined both of them.
we try different algorithms and we take the matrices out of it by finding the IOU and what is the MAP score each of the algorithm gives. Okay, so first we tried with efficient net because we really wanted a small binary out and a very lightweight binary. So we tried with efficient net, and then we moved on to faster RCNN. Also, we tried with SSD and then YOLO v3. Okay, all these are object detection algorithms. End of the day.
Hmm.
Okay, so if you see, this is how our training data would look like. These are trucks that we have collected. So this is how a car carrier truck would look like. Okay, so I'll tell you how we are annotating this data. We use this tool called label IMG. Okay, so this label IMG enables us to annotate data in two formats. One is a Pascal VOC, which is an XML based, which we will use for faster RCN and SSD and efficient net type of object detection algorithms. And for YOLO v3, we really love to have a text file based annotation file that is created after we annotate our file. Okay, so let's see. Oh dear. Okay. So this is the given training image that we have collected to build our data. So what we do is, by using this tool, we basically will draw a bounding box, because end of the day, our object detection algorithm is going to give us two things. One is the bounding box, that is the coordinate in which the object is located, and then the label associated with it. Also with the confidence score. Okay. So if you see, this is how we will go around and draw our bounding box, and then what would be the label? The label here would be car, right? Similarly, don't have a motorbike here. There is another car, but there are occlusion factors like humans are standing in front of this car. So we would only go around and then do this. Okay. Now say there is another car here. What we would do is we would simply annotate this along with the label. So at this point, we decide whether we want a YOLO file or we want this to be saved as YOLO file or Pascal file. Okay. So this is how we will annotate our file. So based on the annotations that we have created, this is a YOLO annotation. So this is going to convert the label that we have given along with its coordinates in which the object was located. So it captures two information as the training in the annotation file. Okay. So similarly, if you have to take the XML file, the other Pascal file. So okay, this is also a YOLO file.
So that means for YOLO, we need to make the annotation file as text file. Is
Text
that
file.
better?
You're right. You're right.
And moreover, can we train the YOLO for customized datasets as well?
This is a customized data set.
But
Because
because I am also using the YOLO, in fact, the YOLO version 5, which is the latest one. And I'm facing the issues in those things. That's why I was asking you.
okay, I can send you a repository, which is a proven repository that you can just go around and follow. That would really give you a result. That has all the code and the steps that is needed
Yeah.
to build.
Please, if you can do that, would be a good favor for me.
Sure, I will do that. Yeah. So this is how the XML file would look. So again, if you see, it has the location in which the object was detected, along with its label name, along with other factors also. Yeah. See what is the image here? The image is of a truck. Okay. This is how we annotate our images. Based on the annotation that we build, so now we have a data set that is like that is built along with the annotated. So after that, we just follow up the procedure in building our algorithm. So usually 70% of our work should go in preparing our data set. If you have prepared your data set efficiently, your other steps are going to be very redundant. It's like really easy in getting your right accuracy also. Yeah. Okay. So going back to the third one, AI in automotive. Yeah. Let's see. So far we saw what an AI is, where we stand in terms of maturing our AI process and all that. Yeah. We also saw what is a data driven approach, what is a other traditional approach that we use. Now we will see how AI is applied in automotive other than self-driving cars. Yeah. So again, a short video I would like to play. So stay focused. So these are engineering drawings. We call it as PLM drawings. Okay, people from mechanical background would have already understood what these drawings are. So these are drawings that are done for all the vehicle parts that are assembled in the manufacturing plant. Okay, so you take any part, even the seat cover that the company provides, OEM we say, OEM or factory produced one, factory produced parts. So any parts if you take, will have to undergo some sort of regulations. Yeah, it might be flammability regulations or your government designed regulations, safety regulations, or the typical regulations that your export compliances asks you to do, all that. Yeah, so all these are some way incorporated inside this PLM drawing. Yeah, so you take any automobile company, there will be an audit team who sits on top of these drawings and then audits this drawing to see a given part and a drawing associated to it undergoes all the regulations that it is mandated to go. So we have used computer vision techniques to automate this whole audit process. So if you see, we will only take a very small example here. You see this this S and R along with an inverted triangle, we call this a CSR symbol. Okay, so these symbols indicates that this component that is going to be fitted in the car will have to undergo safety and regulation. Okay, so we have used OpenCV, OCR, and object detection techniques to detect this from the drawing, if you again watch it from the beginning, the drawing is inputted. We use OpenCV to segment the drawings into certain frames, which the object detection algorithm can take, because it cannot take very huge images. So it is segmented into 1000 cross 1000 patches. After that, it is passed on to a deep learning based algorithm. That is an object detection algorithm. It goes around and searches every patch that we produced. Okay, one after the other, from top to bottom, from left to right, it has come to this patch to identify there is a CSR symbol available in this patch of drawing. So once it identifies, it is going to extract that object, that is the CSR symbol, and then is going to tell us how many such CSR symbols were present. So it really goes and identifies in all the patches. So since it is an object detection algorithm, if you notice it closely, as I said, it draws the bounding box along with the labels. So here the labels are S and R. It says, okay, both safety and regulations are available along with the confidence score. Similarly, if you see here, only S is available. Yeah, on the bottom there is only R available. So it draws a bounding box along with the labels associated with it. So these are some of the grassroots level implementations that we have done using AI. So this is how the actual AI would look like. It's not something that a robot is going to come tomorrow and kill whole of the humanity. Yeah. So that falls under super AI. So these are narrow AI and general AI that we are currently dealing in our day-to-day life. Is really helping our lives. Yeah. Now let's see what most can be done in computer vision. Okay, we really talked about image classification, object detection, and image segmentation. So we saw classification examples. In the fish classification, we took that as an example, where the classification is going to only give you the label. It's not going to give you any bounding box or anything, right? So similarly, in the object detection, just like the video that we saw in the last for the PLM engineering drawings, it is going to draw a bounding box around the object of interest along with the label and confidence score. And the third one is the segmentation. So segmentation does whatever the object detection is going to do, but also it pixelates the object of interest. It's similar to the video that we saw here. Huh? There's another video. So if you watch closely, the person walking now, it not only detects the person with a bounding box, but also pixelates the person, that object, even in a video. So in that way, this not only helps us in identifying the object, but also tells us the count of the object by pixelating with the different colors for different objects. perfect. New loop. So, as I said, the instance segmentation is going to pixelate the object, different objects in different colors, and also tell you the label along with the confidence scores. So this is the most that we can do in terms of classification, detection, and segmentation in computer vision. Apart from this, computer vision can be also used in applying OCR techniques. It's like how we extract text from a given PDF or image using Tesseract engines that are already pre-built and trained on LSTM based huge corpus of text. So this is some of the other ways that we can apply computer vision to enable our lives. Yeah. So other than this, there is also handwritten recognition, just like how we did using MNIST dataset. MNIST dataset is the micro level of the handwritten recognition. And other than this, the very fundamental of the self-driving car is the instance segmentation itself, because the instance segmentation, like we saw in the video, is going to tell you what the video, what are the objects that you might encounter while you drive your car. And based on that, it also computes the distance between your vehicle and the object in front of you. And it takes corrective actions against what needs to be done on the object that we encounter. Say if the object is like really close, it's an intrusion, then we will have to apply the brake or slow down the vehicle. Or when you see a traffic light which is turned red, so the vehicle would be instructed to slow down or apply brakes. So this is how so this falls under general AI. So it's transferring knowledge from one domain to another domain. So this is some of the typical applications of computer vision that we apply on our day-to-day basis. So this is all about the lecture that I had in mind for the day. We will spend another 20 minutes in taking up questions. If you want, you can open up your mic and talk, or you can post your questions here.
So please share that YOLO repository and the coding part which you said.
Oh yeah, sure. I will do that. I will have to search and send. I can post in the same forum, or I don't know. Ms. Priya can maybe answer, or I will send it to Priya. She can send it to every one of you through email or something.
No, sir, you can post it in the chat.
Okay.
No problem.
The chat will be live for a while, no? At least
Yeah.
after we close the session.
Yeah, no problem. You can chat.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Any other questions that you have in mind? It can be in a very basic level also. It really doesn't matter.
And sir, what other tool like we can use for crowd counting? Basically, I'm working on that using YOLO. So instead of YOLO, what I can use?
For crowd counting, as in like you are going to count the humans, huh?
Yeah, humans.
Okay. See, YOLO is itself can work. You can try faster RCNN also, because the difference between this faster RCNN algorithm and this is faster RCNN also can identify objects at a distance. Say if like one human and the human two is on like at least 10 or 15 meters in difference apart from each other. So YOLO, I don't think will detect the person apart, while faster RCNN can really do that. But it's a computationally expensive algorithm to train and to implement also.
And like, will this faster RCNN work for the dense crowd as well? Because YOLO is making issue in that case.
Yeah, you can try with faster RCNN. I would recommend you to try first and second. But then when you say you want to find the crowd, wait, I have something to show. Because you can try using instant segmentation, because I've seen such applications somewhere. Not this one. I have to. Actually, I have to search those. It should have, yes, yeah, this one. See, such problems can be solved using image segmentation. See, here it says you are not only labeling objects in a picture, but we are locating their position in the picture and finding which exact pixel belongs to each object. So in that way, what it implies is it's going to not only detect the object, but also going to tell you the count, because every object is colored in a different color. So you're going to identify the number of people present in a given point in time. So this is the video that I showed you. It's similar to that. So it's going to detect all the objects that is in front of you. So similarly, in order for you to identify the number of images, so you can use this segmentation techniques to see what result it gives instead of object detection.
Okay.
Yeah. I will also try to write an article on it. Yeah. Anyway, I have plans writing. I couldn't write because of few reasons. So these are topics that I write. I have things in mind to write also. So far I have written till machine learning algorithms. Yes, till logistic regression, which is nothing but your neural networks. So I'll try to write on deep learning and object detection and image segmentation also. Any other questions? If you say a little bit more on the fish detection system, you will technically overview. Souvik Biswas, I don't have an architecture presentation on it, but I can talk about it. Yeah. See, you want to know about the fish classification or the freshness detection or the shark detection problem? Biswas, is it which problem in precise? Okay, if you see, the difference between a clear eye, the fish, as it is shown here, versus the clogged eye is how different it looks. Okay, this is the data. This is the data that I collected from Chennai Marina Beach, straight from fisherman boats. So this is a very fresh fish which was caught like few hours back. So if you look at this eye, you see how clear it looks versus this eye and this eye. Yeah. These two are like old fishes. These are like basically that I took from over the counter in a fish shop. So the algorithm is to identify. It is going to basically locate the eyes, and it's going to do a classification between these three categories. One is a clear eye, one is a semi-clogged eye, like totally clogged eye. So based on that, we based on the study that we have made, this is like at least it will be good for 1 day from the time it is caught. So it is like super fresh, ready to consume. You can even make sashimi with it, or you can make sushi with this fish. But if you take a look at this two fishes, it could be at least like 2 or 3 days old. So the third one at least is not fit for consumption at all. So based on all this logics, the technical stack would be two. One is to detect the eyes in the fish. That is an object detection problem. So based on the detected eyes, we are going to crop the eyes out and then send it to an image classification problem, which is going to classify between three labels. One is super fresh, okay to eat, worst, don't eat. So this will be the three categories on which reclassification will be done. If this answer your question, or you want to know about the other two detections that we are working, other two are like pretty straightforward. The species classification is a straightforward classification problem. You just open your camera, take a photo, upload it, send to the API. It's going to tell you the species of fish. If it is an unknown species, it's going to tell you the fish is unknown. And the third one would be a pure detection problem, where it is going to detect the shark and stingray from a given footage. The footage is a drone footage from a harbor. I hope this answers your question, Biswas. Sovik. Okay. He says okay. Okay. Any other question?
Participants, any other questions?
Or if you have any other questions, if you don't have it now, you can reach me on this LinkedIn. It's the same in LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. Yeah, you can even write an email to me. Again, same. YOLO repository Ruchika Lalit, I will definitely send it to you, or you can reach me on LinkedIn also if I tend to forget. I usually don't, just in case. I will find and send it to you. I should have it somewhere that I cannot reach now. Or you can also follow the Medium articles that I'm writing. It can be of real good help to you all, at least to your students. I can say, because this has syllabus right from the beginning. It starts from the very basic, in fact. So if you take logistic regression, I have borrowed few knowledge from Andrew NJ courses. So it's sort of like a comprehensive article of all the present day good articles that you can find. So logistic regression, if you take, is all about gradient descent. So gradient descent is all about derivation. Derivation is all about slopes. So if and only if you understand what a slope is, you're going to understand gradient descent. So the very basic understanding of gradient descent that you see in your everyday life is the banking that you see on your roads that you travel every day. If you see the edges of roads on both the sides would be a little curved. That is done to avoid vehicles from toppling. It will be there in your first year physics. But of course, this is the fundamental behind the gradient descent also. So only if student understands this, they are going to really understand this gradient descent altogether. So it is very important that we convey all this in this article in a comprehensive way. So I have made my best in trying to convey all these points. So even your first year and second year students will be able to like totally grasp this earlier. So in the open CV and the very basics of computer vision also, it talks from what an image is. Because fundamentally in a lot of articles that I have seen, a lot of them do not cover the very basic, but they straightly jump to talking about what is a dimension of image, how we do using NumPy array and all that. Yeah. So I have made a point to cover all this. So this can be also a very good place to start. Only thing that I have missed is I have missed to include all the references that I have made, but I will be doing it in a while anyway. So if you see all this, I've compared this with the Paint also, OpenCV versus Paint, because whatever operations that you can do with the color or the dimension in the image can also be done using Paint. You very simple. You open Paint, you will be still able to do a lot of things your OpenCV can do. No pictures. Okay. This is anyway there in the article. Yeah, please make a point to read all this. Okay. Any other questions that I should answer? Riya ma'am, please. Okay.
If no other questions, means we can wind up, sir. No.
Who wants the PDF? The PDF of what? I don't think so. I can send this presentation as PDF unless I make some edit, because there is some company logo here and there.
Okay, you can send it to me later, and I will forward.
Sure. I will send in the same space. Yeah.
Thank you, Rakesh.
Okay. If there are no more questions, we can wind up, or we can wait.
Participants, any more questions? If you have any questions, you can ask. Otherwise, we will wind up.
Biswas sir, I will definitely tell you the algorithms because it's not like single algorithm that we would try and do. I will start with faster RCN and go to SSD YOLO. Before that, I will also try other algorithms that are here and there available. Okay, I will send you a link for object detection right away. This I have in mind always. This is a lot of. This is a very proven link that will work for object detection for till faster RCN. It's not. This doesn't work for YOLO, but this to work till faster RCN and this works with TensorFlow 1.4 till 1.5 and 8 it will work, but do not try with TensorFlow 2. Yeah. Please share your knowledge with your students also. If in case any of your students wants to talk to you, you can pass on my LinkedIn ID or my email. They can write to me anything that they want. I will be always happy to help.
Majita ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir. On behalf of the institution, I would like to express my heartfelt thanks for spending your valuable time with us and for a wonderful content delivery. We look forward for such mind-blowing sessions in the future, sir. Thank you very much, and thank you all the participants.
Thank you. I really hope you mean it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you for accepting our invitation and for your lecture. It's really a very informative one. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. Okay, I'll make a movie. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madhita ma'am, stop the recording.